Hi, guys. It is Ryan Fowler. I'm here with my good friend Teresa K. This is Inner Masculine Live. Teresa is inner feminine. We are partnering on some projects. He's a very good friend, one of the highest quality people I've known her for 15 years. And once a week, Teresa will be on Inner Masculine from now on in order to give a healthy counterpoint. Because yes, women matter too. And shocker, but they do. So we want to have one show where you get the masculine perspective and the feminine perspective. And Teresa is great for that. She has tons of wisdom. So today we are going to talk about boundaries. We're actually doing a 5-part series on what is inner game. That was Teresa's suggestion. So first we're going to I've been on John Hogwood's show. We've been talking about inner game. So we're going to get the female perspective of inner game, what that is, as well as mine briefly. And then we're going to talk about, today we're going to talk about boundaries as an aspect of inner game, what it is, how to enforce it, really, what is the internal state you need to get to where you just automatically have healthy boundaries. You can push people away too quickly. You can let people walk all over you. How do we meet that sweet spot? So welcome to the show, Teresa, and go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe give your take on what inner game is to you.
Hello, Ryan. Happy to be here. Hi. And you're always so generous with your compliments. And I'm here because of the high value man that you are and how you have completely transformed your life in developing your technology and what you are offering to the world. So I'm very privileged and honored to be here.
Thank you.
Inner game. I have a saying that I've developed over the years, and I've developed it with, girlfriends and exploring, my inner game. And it's that it's all an inside job. Everything we want is an inside job. And boundaries are an inside job. We think of boundaries as being like a fence, so to speak, around us to protect us from other people and how they interact with us. But it really begins as an inside job. And that's the premise of most of the work that I do for myself, thinking about everything. So if I may go on a little bit more.
Sure.
Okay.
And I would say anything you like, but I would like you to add maybe your take on the importance of boundaries in intersexual dynamics, relationships between men and women, because that's probably where, it's important everywhere, but especially important there. But go ahead.
So I look at the word triggers. You know how we think about triggers like he triggered me, or he said that, or she said that, and or they did this, and gosh, it bothered me. And so that's, because I don't have firm boundaries or whatever. I see triggers as opportunities that just highlight or bring to consciousness, bring to my awareness, something that I have not healed, something that needs to be delved into. And boundaries, when I get triggered or when there are triggers, to me, it suggests a boundary. Has a boundary been crossed? Or
a trigger is maybe a boundary violation to you?
Might be, not always, but might be boundary violation, right? And boundaries with strangers tend to be really easy, right?
Sure.
We're at the store interacting with someone, or at a restaurant interacting with strangers. It's kind of easy to have an interaction where you feel you're being respected. Maybe not for everyone, but
just common courtesy and respect. Yeah.
Right. It's in our more intimate relationships where boundaries, I think, become even more of an issue. Our friendships, when we're dating, and boundaries fluctuate, right? Mm-hmm. Boundaries flow depending on who we're relating to. If you're my son, right, and you've got a key to my place, you're welcome to come in. He knows he's welcome to come in at any time, and the boundary is very loose for him and him coming over. But
not before entering the bathroom if the door's closed.
Of course, right? But that's a different boundary that I would have for someone that I just met or someone that I'm dating or a girlfriend, right? Yeah. And so boundaries are very specific to the individual and the state of the relationship. But most importantly, it's how that, for me, how I feel about that person and how comfortable I feel about communicating, articulating what is comfortable for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give my take real quick, Cake. We have thank you, Teresa. We also have a YouTube clip we're going to analyze where a guy likens boundaries to porcupines, and it's pretty interesting. So we're going to pick that apart. But how I view boundaries, there's this psychologist who has a YouTube channel. He's now passed away. I think his name's Gunther or Gundry. Anyways, he stated what boundaries actually are very simply. If someone does something you don't want to do and they keep doing it, and you let them know and they keep doing it, they're violating your boundaries. Now, you're absolutely correct. Boundaries are different in one situation than another situation, because a stranger you don't want doing certain things that a close friend or the significant other is just fine with doing. So how do we kind of know what good boundaries are? Because a lot of people don't know what healthy boundaries are, and they get in these relationships and they don't even realize that they're being taken advantage of. And then they start kind of noticing, hey, I'm not feeling too good here. This person's treating me worse and worse. How do we know where the boundaries should be? My personal take is you got to get clean out your inside world and get connected to your inside world. And then really for me, it's a gut thing. A lot of people don't trust their gut. A lot of people don't trust themselves, don't trust their intuition, don't trust their power to enforce boundaries. If you don't, that's a sign you have internal work you need to do. But when you get your internal world healthy and you're connected to your internal world, for me, we have something called a wise guide inside. That's just when your internal world's healthy, you're going to know. You're going to know, and then just trust yourself to enforce that. But that's kind of the 50,000 foot view. We're going to dive in, more into the specifics of boundaries. But we had a YouTube clip. It's a TED Talk. After the show, I'll put the link in the description that I wanted to pick apart. And this guy has a pretty interesting take on boundaries. And I think I agree a lot with some of it, maybe not completely. But we're going to go ahead and play this clip, and then me and Teresa are going to comment. I might be pausing it every now and then, but most of the discussion will be after. It's a little bit longer clip. It's about 10 minutes, but it's pretty good. And then my good friend Brent Caldwell here. I had a show with Brent last Saturday, and he's mailing my tax extension in for me today. So also hi to Mike Horton. He says here, Brent Caldwell, fellow hypnotherapist, by the way. He got certified recently. Mike Harton, your issue in the past was not enforcing your boundaries as soon as someone crosses them. Instead, you just let the resentment build up without taking action. Yeah. So I think, Teresa, after this clip, let's talk about the consequences of not enforcing boundaries correctly, because the consequences can be absolutely devastating. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I would love your take on that for sure, because I have not been married, but you've been married. So I know you got some stuff on boundaries that I don't have. Tamail says, hi guys. Good to see you, Tamails. So here we go. We're going to share this clip and comment occasionally, and then really pick it apart after.
One of the greatest lessons I learned about boundaries came from porcupines. So it was a really, really cold winter night, and these porcupines huddled together to stay warm. But as they got close to each other, they started to poke each other and cause each other pain. So as soon as they experienced this, they dispersed, but being away from the group caused them to be at the mercy of the harsh, cold winter weather. So they came back together only to redisperse, and they went back and forth until eventually they found that sweet spot. The sweet spot where they were benefiting each other in that relationship and they were protected from the elements. And also, they had enough space where they weren't constantly hurting each other and poking each other and causing each other pain. This story by Arthur Schopenhauer made me really think about that sweet spot in relationships. Is there a place where we can benefit from each other without constantly hurting each other? And it made me ask the question, what if boundaries weren't just a yes or just a no? What if boundaries were a how much? What if there was that sweet spot in each relationship like those porcupines? After 26 years of obsessively studying human behavior and working with thousands of people, I've come to discover there are two overarching types of boundaries: fear-based boundaries and love-based boundaries. Fear-based boundaries are just that yes or just that no, that excessive yes or excessive no. And I used to operate in that excessive yes. It was back when I was in a boy band. And some of you think I'm still in one because of my hair and my outfit. But that was a different season of my life. But in that season, my nickname was Passive. I was people-pleasing. I said yes when I wanted to say no. People would make fun of me or poke at me, and I would do that awkward laugh, even though it hurt. I didn't want to create conflict. And I realized that every time someone poked me, some people I let in too close, I would get triggered. Some people we let in too close. Each of us has this internal safety threshold that when certain people cross it, like those porcupines, we get poked. And it triggers our nervous system to set off an alarm and say, danger, you're not safe, or you're in trouble. And then we get in a stress response or survival response: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Here's the question: how can we fully give or receive love if we're in defense? Because we have to feel safe before we can fully give or receive love. That excessive yes had me missing out on true, authentic, loving connection. And on the flip side of fear-based boundaries, you have the excessive no, that wall. I will not let you in, and you will not poke me, you will not hurt me. So we say no to everything, and we let people in just enough. I used to operate in that as well. And so I was sitting with one of my clients, and she was telling me, I really want to be in a relationship. I just let people in just enough, but I don't want to get hurt. And as she's saying that, I end up smiling, and she's like, why are you smiling? And I realized because I was single at the time, and I was like, this is why I'm single. I'm operating in the same exact thing. I realized that the same walls that keep pain and hurt out are the same walls that keep love out.
Okay, so I think that's true. I just want to give my take real quick. This guy, people who do this, too many no's, too many yeses, they all have bad, painful subconscious programs that are getting triggered. And that is making them enforce boundaries improperly. Would you agree, Teresa? Do you have any comments on what you've heard so far?
Totally. It's got to do with our own wounding. You know, haven't you met people, and I think everything is energy as well, right? And boundaries are energy. Have you met people that have really, really strong boundaries? Their energy is so closed off. And they're just not comfortable to be around. You know, they walk around so tight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the energy put off by people that are people pleasers, and you kind of don't respect them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put your finger on it, but they're just like doormats, right? I think what you're saying is exactly right.
One can feel not good enough, the other can feel lonely and isolated, or they can both feel that.
I think they both feel that.
And feeling unsafe, feeling not good enough, feeling, hey, if this person gets too close, maybe they'll see the real me. And I don't like the real me, and they won't either. So I'm going to push them away first, just whatever. Feeling unsafe, this person's going to hurt me. This person is going to backstab me, betray me. I felt all that in my past. And it's these feelings tied to bad subconscious programs, traumatic subconscious programs that you're then going to react to those feelings and put up too many walls or people please or let people in too quickly because you're just dying for validation. So you're going to sacrifice your own emotional well-being because you just are desperate for any sort of validation. So you let people walk all over you, or you let predatory people in your life. It's all tied back to internal bad subconscious programs that are making you enforce or not enforce these boundaries improperly. So we'll keep going. And I 100% agree with everything you said. Here we go.
So now we're isolated, dealing with the elements by ourselves like those porcupines. And studies have also shown that we heal in healthy relationships. It's called co-regulation. So now those same walls are keeping full healing out. This excessive no had me missing out on full love and full healing. That's why fear-based boundaries are not the way to go. They focus only on survival, and they usually create disconnection. We're either isolated or we're constantly being triggered and poked, feeling unsafe. We're either feeling unsafe alone or feeling unsafe with other people. But what if we can go from strictly survival to creation, to love? What if we could feel safe enough to give and receive love? And that's what takes us from the yes or no into the love-based boundary, which asks the question, how much? What is that sweet spot? What is that spot in each relationship where we can benefit from each other without consistently hurting each other? And when we go from yes or no to how much, we ask how much time, how much energy, how much resources, how much attention do I give each particular relationship on a consistent basis? How open am I? Or how deep are our conversations? I smile because I think there's some people you just can't have certain conversations with, certain topics. And there's some people you can be totally open with. But that question, how much, allows me to have a starting point. Where do we start? And it's flexible. We can go back and forth. And so I created these proximity maps to help us understand where do we start and how do we navigate. In the inner circle is that middle. That's your healthy, intimate relationships. And the closer someone is to that inner circle, the more they'll get of all those resources, your time, your energy, your attention, how open you are on a consistent basis. And the further away out they are, the less they'll get. And the best part about it is this is just a starting point. What is that sweet spot? That healthy inner circle, that intimate relationship that you have, those are your healthy partner relationships, your healthy family relationships, your healthy best friendships. And then we go a little bit further out. Those are your close relationships. Those are healthy friendships, maybe your close colleagues that are healthy. Then you have your casual relationships. Those are friendships and acquaintances. And then limited relationships, strangers, people you see on social media all the time that you think are your friends. Or those are your unhealthy family relationships or unhealthy friendships. And then last but definitely not least is zero contact. Those are abusive or toxic relationships, and they get 0% of your time, 0% of your energy, resources. And the best part about it is it's flexible, right? Sometimes people start out as strangers and move to your inner circle. That's my wife. We met as strangers, and she slowly moved into my inner circle. Now she's of my inner circles. And yeah, I can clap for that. I just got married this year, so. And it's beautiful to know that we have this beautiful gift called choice. And we get to understand that this is just a starting point. And people can come closer or further away depending on the situation, the relationship, what happens. And as we think about it, what are indicators? What determines where they start? What determines that proximity? Well, there are three things you could think of. First is your values. What's really important to you? For me, it's trust. It's being able to have open, loving, honest conversations. It's someone that makes me better and I make them better. And it's someone that seeks out truth. And once I knew my values, I knew what I wanted in my inner circle, and my boundaries became more of an invitation. An invitation to where maybe I honor their values, they honor mine, and we continually grow together. And those people we could bring closer to our inner circle. Number two is violations. You want to look at your current relationships and understand how your boundaries currently. I ask the questions, how often and how badly? Sometimes people can violate your boundaries often, and it's just a little bit, and you think, I need a little bit of distance. Sometimes people can violate your boundaries badly, like abuse, and all they need to do is violate it once. So you can understand your current relationships and understand what are the proximities that I need to set. How much distance? And third, and I love this one, it's emotions. All the emotional people are like, whoa, I feel all those. But the truth is, emotions are messengers. Emotions are indicators. And so they just make you ask better questions. So if you're around somebody that's constantly triggering you, or you feel anxious around them, or you leave and you feel depleted, maybe you could reassess that situation in that relationship. Maybe some proximity, or maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had. Or on the other spectrum, maybe some of you are in a season of loneliness and you want closer relationships. Who can you bring closer? Who lights you up? And emotions aren't the only indicators. Sometimes we feel emotions around people that don't need to be closer to us, but at least we can ask questions. If we look to our emotions, it can help us determine the proximity within our boundaries.
Now, this is something I find interesting, and Teresa, I'd like your take if you have something to say. So many people in the inner game psychological health field never talk about the benefit of emotions, how they can be beneficial. He's talking about that here. They really are your guide. Once you get your internal world healthy, or, if your internal world's not healthy, still you're getting feedback with that as well. They are your guide for proper boundaries, your gut, your emotions. That's how I view it. Especially once your internal world's healthy. If you can tell you're getting triggered improperly, that's telling you something too. That's telling you maybe here's something in me I need to fix. Because, man, logically, it doesn't make sense for my emotions to get triggered. Emotions, when you have a proper connection with them, are very helpful. Most of the time they are. If you have bad programs in you, they can absolutely be maladaptive. But there is a strong plus side to emotions. We need emotions as part of who we are. And they are a very good gauge for whether there's something in you that needs fixing or where the boundaries actually should be. Do you have anything to add, Teresa?
Sure, absolutely. So we're talking about, healthy versus unhealthy, right? If you've done a lot of work within yourself and you've cleaned out a lot of old baggage and old emotions, your emotions, energy in motion, can be a wonderful messenger system, right? As to what feels right, what doesn't feel right. Triggers, right? They trigger emotions. I always go back to when I get triggered, it's a practice. I'm not always perfect at it, but I'm triggered. Why am I triggered? What is that emotion that I'm feeling? What is the genesis of that emotion? Where is that emotion coming from? Is it really about the outside world, or is it, tapped into something that's deeper, that's indicating something that needs to be healed? It's also, I love his proximity map, right? Because I go back to like my son and him just barging into my house, he can do that versus a stranger, of course.
Yeah.
And it's all a dance. We dance with people all the time, right? And sometimes we feel we've got this in a really healthy place in a relationship, and they do something that triggers us. And is it that they broke a boundary, or is it that something within us woke up that wasn't there before, that is giving us a message?
It's there. You just are not aware. It made you aware of it.
Made you aware of it, right? Yeah. And it's, the onion peeling off the layers. Maybe you're at a more sensitive time. Maybe life isn't going so well. So you've got, you're more sensitive than you would be at another time when you're excited. So far, I'm really enjoying his TED Talk and how he explains everything.
Yeah, and after this, I really want to have a conversation. I think will be very good on how to properly enforce boundaries, what to say, what to do when there are boundary violations, because that is something a lot of people and a lot of guys in relationships just get boundaries messed up so bad, and it causes massive problems. So we'll watch the rest of this, and then we'll talk about that.
But why are boundaries so important? Well, imagine this. Imagine in your inner circle, You have one of those porcupines that constantly triggers you. Well, that's going to put you in a dysregulated state. You're going to be in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. And that's going to affect your relationships. That's going to affect your mental health. And it's going to affect your physical health because your body will be in a state of stress. And then it'll just funnel through the rest of your life, every other topic. But what if you actually went from being reactive to proactive? What if you went from just playing defense your whole life, from a fear-based state, to actually playing offense as well and choosing your life? If you think about it from a basketball perspective, if all you did was play the best defense, the best score you could have is 0-0. But what if we stepped into our power and our choice, and instead of being reactive, we stepped into, what is that sweet spot? How do I create loving, optimal relationships? We might just move from the illusion of protection, from fear-based boundaries, to true love, authenticity, and connection of love-based boundaries. And when we ask the question, what if boundaries weren't just a yes or just a no? What if boundaries were a how much? Thank you so much.
All right, all right, all right. Okay, so any additional thoughts, Teresa, before I dive in?
No.
Okay, so I have a couple things I wanted to bounce off of you. What if, let's say, you're dating someone and they do something, maybe they intentionally did it, maybe unintentionally, maybe it's in a bit of a gray area. It's not a big boundary violation, but it's something you perceive as maybe being a little disrespectful. Or maybe it just is straight up, well, I can give you an example. Maybe the date is 20 minutes late. Maybe the date makes a remark that might have been a little snotty or something like that. How would you handle that?
Good question. I think it depends.
Let's say otherwise the date's going great.
Well, I think it depends. I think those things are clues. So again, I go back to, let's say they were a little bit rude. Were they really a little bit rude, or have I perceived what they said rude?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being sensitive to what was being said? Right? If they're late, for me, lateness, being on time, is a bit of a boundary issue. It's a respect issue. It's more about them respecting themselves. But if someone's late, is it, what's the reason why they were late, and, whatever. Everybody.
That's interesting what you said about them respecting themselves, though.
Oh, I think being on time is all about, it's about respecting yourself, keeping your word, right? If you and I had an agreement that we would meet today at 10 o'clock and I was late because something big happened, all right, that's okay. But consistently, I'm on time. If I gave my word, it is so important for me to follow through on my word. I think most people that can't keep time and are consistently late, it's an issue with themselves about keeping their word. And if somebody can't keep their word to themselves, then that communicates to me, they're not going to be able to keep their word to me. And that impacts how I feel from a trust perspective.
Yeah. So let's say someone said something that was maybe, I'd like to give my take too, but I definitely want your take. So let's say someone's consistently 15 minutes late. Like you've had 3 dates, they've been 15. Would you keep dating them? Would you bring it up and say, hey, what would you do?
Well, I don't think it would get to 3 dates. I think by the second date, if they were late the second date, then we'd have a chat about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to get to 3 dates. 15 minutes is a long time.
Yeah. Especially for us, because we're so damn busy. We are, man.
15 minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
And it's about respect. It's about respect for them, and it's respect for me. I am never bored. I have tons of stuff that I can do and keep myself entertained for 15 minutes. And I can go with the flow. But if it's someone who's consistent, no, That doesn't work. That's such
yeah.
a lack of respect for me, and it tells me they don't respect themselves, and it really shakes up the trust.
Yep. What about if they say something that might have been a little rude, but you're not sure, you know, if it was intentional or not? How would you handle that?
Well, I'd check with myself first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after I check with myself, then I'd explore, hey, what did you mean by that?
That's exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you said this one thing. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Just
And what's your experience been? My experience is just asking that. They kind of get the message that they might have had purposely or inadvertently said something rude just by asking that. And what's your been experience when you actually do that?
I try to live in curiosity.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
I'm human.
We're humans.
But, you know, I live in curiosity. Hey, curious about that. Or what did you mean by that? And check with myself. Did, you know, that statement tap into, you know, a part of me that's very tender and sensitive? Objectively, it may not be a big deal. And, you know, do I need self-soothing?
Yeah.
Did what they say is true? You know, is there truth there? And I'm curious. So I don't really get offended. You know, these people that live in a fence.
Well, they have trauma in them if they're living in a fence.
It's a lot of trauma, right? And I go back to, it's like one of my favorite isms these days is, you know, it's all an inside job. Being offended is an inside job. That, you know, no
100%.
one can offend you. No one outside of you can offend you. No one can really trigger you, right?
100%. When you're done, I have a great story to share on that, but keep going.
No, go for it.
Okay. So there is a member of my family who,
your speaker went down a little bit.
okay. Is this better?
Oh, yes. Much better.
Okay, great. So there is a member of my family who is very critical of others. And they used to push my buttons and be critical, and it would really hurt my feelings because I had a lot of toxic shame in. And for our audience, so, you know, just a reminder for those of you who don't know how our subconscious just really briefly works. We develop all these beliefs in childhood based on how we interpret the world around us, what happens to us, but more importantly, how we interpret it. And of course, abuse, you're always going to interpret it in a bad way. So these beliefs are tied to feelings. That's how your subconscious works. When you get triggered, what's going on is there's something in the outside world that is a match for a painful belief in you, such as I'm not good enough. So if there's something in the outside world that is a match for your belief, I'm not good enough, the feeling tied to I'm not good enough gets spiked. There can be similar things to toxic shame, but it can make you angry, it can make you resentful, it can make you depressed, it can make you hurt. It's very closely tied with boundary violations, but maybe someone genuinely doesn't mean to offend you, but if you have a lot of toxic shame, you're just getting triggered all the time anyways. So I have this family member. We were at dinner 5 years ago at a restaurant. This family member was trying to get under my skin the whole night. And in the past, when I hadn't cleared out my trauma, my toxic shame, they succeeded and they would wreck me, and they kind of like that. You know, they have some psychological issues. This person the whole night was doing little insidious digs to try and get a rise out of me. But at that point 5 years ago, I would say almost all of my toxic shame was out of me. I knew I had value. I knew who they are, what they were about. I knew it had nothing to do with me. And so they're doing this, and honestly, I notice they're doing it, but I just flat out don't care. I don't give a shit. I really don't. They're doing all this stuff. I'm just mostly ignoring them. I'm like, whatever. I know this is the dumb stuff they do. I know it has nothing to do with me. I know I have value. I'm freaking awesome. So whatever. You know, this is what we call 0 F's given alpha male attitude, or alpha female, or whatever you want to call it. But it's 0 F's given because you know your value. So, and I knew my value. I knew they were just throwing crap my way. And so I just ignored it. And after, at one point in the night, I noticed this person looking at me and their head was cocked back like this. And they had this confused look on their face. You see where this is going, Teresa?
Absolutely.
And I was like, I intuitively knew this person been trying to get a rise out of me or push my buttons the whole night. None of it's working. And they give me this confused look like, what the hell do I have to do to get Ryan triggered and mess with him? And nothing was working. And I'm like, this is a victory moment. This person has no power over me. I just don't care. Yeah. So I'll tell you, there's other times when I was in Texas, I moved from Texas in January this year. And there was a lady, very nice lady, very sweet, helpful lady, but she tends to maybe violate boundaries at times. She'll tell me to do things like I'm her son and she's the mom. I'm freaking 49 years old. Total boundary violation. Don't tell me what to do. If you want to make suggestions, fine, but it was like kind of in a bossy way. And she had plenty of her own issues to focus on. Honestly, she was trying to focus on my issues to distract me from her. But anyways, whatever. She was telling me some stuff. And I was like, your behavior is unacceptable. But we're still friends. But yeah, I won't tolerate that. So don't tell me what to do. And I wasn't angry. It was pretty much said it like that. I'm like, that's unacceptable. And, you know, it's all good. So when your internal world gets healthy, you're going to find you get triggered a lot less. When people do it, it might be more of an annoyance. You might get, it might make you, it might, for me, it might make me a little uncomfortable. Annoyed is probably the best word for it. And, in the past, people would walk all over me. And I felt, well, I don't have value. I was raised where I was bullied and others would walk all over me. So it was just kind of my thing. I was actually kind of afraid to speak up, you know, because that goes back to my family dynamic. What happened there made me afraid to speak up. But now, when you realize you have value no matter what, when you give yourself approval and validation and you feel good about yourself, you're in a position of power where you can just say, you know, again, if you're not sure if someone's violating your boundaries, what you said, Teresa, absolutely agree. Hey, you know, ask them, what did you mean by that? You know, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen a lot of people kind of back off, you know, meaning they kind of understand, oh, I might have been a little rude there. And maybe they realize that maybe they don't. And if they're a decent person, they're like extra nice the rest of the night. Have you noticed any of that?
Well, it just self-corrects, right? Number one, they notice that you're not going to put up with it, right? And and
I'm talking more about women. You're talking maybe more about men. I'm talking in a dating context when women do this, but go ahead.
Right. I think it's just in life in general, right? And bring things to the light. People don't necessarily want stuff brought out to the light. When you bring it out to the light, they realize, oh, this is different. Like, I'm not going to be able to get away with if they had bad intent. And sometimes there's no intention. It just slipped out, right?
Sometimes they do have bad intent. Sometimes they're toxic people.
Right. Sometimes they're toxic. And a couple comments that I have on what you said, you know, our family dynamics teach us so much about who we are. Our family growing up, our family of origin, when we're little, our family is a mirror to our self-worth, right? And so if we've got a family that is showing up in a way that they're saying, your feelings don't matter, what you want doesn't matter, what you need doesn't matter, we grow up thinking we don't matter. And we become people pleasers because as a child, you are completely and totally dependent on your family, on your tribe, on your community.
And you're powerless as a child. You can't leave that family. To a point, you're powerless.
Exactly. So you've got to figure out a way to fit in and accommodate everybody. And so if the mirror, the reflection you get back is your needs don't matter, you're going to be a people pleaser, and it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to enforce boundaries, so to speak.
And that's a huge boundary violation. Your needs don't matter, only mom and dad's or your older brothers or whatever. older sisters,
And
younger
speaking
sisters.
up, this is what I need. You know, it becomes a dance over time, but when you're learning this, it's clumsy. It comes out sometimes maybe aggressive or arrogant.
Let it be clumsy. You're learning.
Right. You're learning. You're learning. And I was going to say something to I lost it, but you know, the family, where it comes from, the people pleasing, the boundaries, and something else that you said that was really interesting. You know, somebody says something, I'm going to make it up, but if they say, gosh, your hair looks terrible, right? And I have the toxic shame that I'm ugly or I'm not good enough or I have to be perfect, right? That belief is like a reticular activating system, right? And it's going to attract or remind me that I am not good enough, that I'm not perfect, that I'm ugly. And so somebody saying something, a comment about my hair, I might be having a really bad hair day. They might be doing me a favor. They might be saying, hey, you're getting on camera, you should fix your hair. But it triggers in me, right, that belief, because that belief that's not healed is looking for evidence. That's all it does, is constantly looking for evidence that I am not good enough. And every comment, everything that happens around
anything outside world that confirms it, it's going to trigger that, and you're going to feel like crap, and that's just messing up so many things.
Exactly. And that
your hair looks great, by the way.
I'm sorry?
Your hair looks great, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's where it goes back to, it's all an inside job. It doesn't matter what someone says on the outside. If that part of me is healed, right? Mm-hmm. I can look at that comment objectively and say, you know what? My hair really does look bad. Or,
but that doesn't mean I'm not good enough. It means I have a bad hair day.
Right. Who cares that I have a bad hair day?
If you're like, okay, my hair looks bad, but I'm still good enough, it's not going to throw you for a loop like it will if you do have toxic shame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what does it matter if my hair is not perfect or whatever, right? And so what you said is just such a great example of how it goes back to, it's an inside job, and it goes back to healing our beliefs and our emotions that are attached to those beliefs. Once we heal that, we can show up more objective in the world, and we can navigate life so much easier and with so much ease and flow.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Our energy expands. Our heart can expand. We can love. That proximity map, right? We can be more inclusive, because even the psychopath in the family that at one time could have triggered you, you could see them
can't
with
mess
compassion.
With me anymore.
You could see them with compassion and with love. Imagine how much more expansive your life would be if that was the case.
Yeah. Now, I keep this person at a healthy distance. You know, anyone who's toxic, I keep at a healthy distance, bare minimum. Just because who wants that? You know, it is, you know, doesn't trigger me, but it is annoying. Now, Mike has a good question, and guys, we're slowly getting better at these comments, so just bear with us. He asked us about 23 minutes ago. If someone betrays you in some way, should you ever let them back in your inner circle, even if they redeem themselves? I would say if they do it once, you can give them a second chance. It kind of depends on the circumstances and what the betrayal is. Can you afford another betrayal? How bad do you want them back in? How remorseful are they? I think it's all going to be, now, if someone betrayed me and there's really no benefit to have them in my life, then no, I wouldn't let them back in, because there's no benefit. Maybe but if there is a benefit, it's like, okay, and if they are truly remorseful, betrayal sounds pretty big. Again, it's a judgment call. If they have value in my life and they're truly remorseful, I'd probably give them one more chance. If they did it again, I would just ixnay them. How about you? But it is kind of case by case specific. What do you think?
Case by case specific. And are they working on themselves? Are they doing the inner work, right? Because if someone's betraying on the outside, it's inside, they're having issues for sure. Are they working on healing those issues?
And if they're not healing, they're going to repeat the same mistakes.
If they're not healing, exactly. So are they changing? Are they doing the inner work? I think that's super, super important.
Yeah, and it's okay to put them maybe in not inner circle, but kind of medium for a while and see what happens.
Well, it depends. If they're your spouse or your partner, right?
True,
that
true.
you know you're in a committed relationship with, and they betray you, it's hard for them to all of a sudden be zero, right?
Yeah.
Going from super close to being outside your circle.
Yeah.
It all depends.
It is circumstance specific. Yeah.
And relationships have a pattern. Relationships have a dance, right?
Yep.
And that dance is so primitive in our how we're wired and how they're wired, right? So great question though.
Okay. So thanks Juan, thanks Mike, thanks my good friend Tim Costello. So Tim, he was actually on my show with his wife last week, except I never hit the go live button, and so it never broadcasted. So Tim and his wife are going to be on again this week. Good to see you, Tim. Tim actually became a hypnotherapist, so he's doing hypnotherapy now as well. And you're very welcome, Mike. So the whole reason we said earlier, you clean out your inside world, you build a connection with your inside world, so you're tuned into your emotions, you're tuned into your intuition, because that is the ultimate guide, Mike. Get your internal world cleaned out, and then your intuition is going to let you know, your emotions are going to let you know how close should you let this person get you again. The reason when our internal world is right, the intuition and emotions are so good is because our intuition and emotions come to us from our subconscious mind. So what's happening is our subconscious mind as adults observes the world around us and interprets that world according to the subconscious programs that are in it and gives us intuition and emotions based on how it interprets the world. If you have a bunch of bad subconscious programs in you, your interpretations are going to be bad and you're going to be struggling. But when you build a healthy connection to your inner world, so you're aware of what your intuition's saying and what you're feeling, and then when you clean out your internal world, you get in a good state, you're going to learn to trust this intuition because it is tied to a supercomputer. Our subconscious mind processes 1,000 times more bits of information per second than our conscious mind. I will give you another example from my life. This was back in 1999, 2000, about 2000. I graduated from college. I started a sales job that was paying very well for the time. And within a few months, they expanded to a new state. And they made me the sales manager there. I had a team of 15, 20 salespeople, probably 20 under me. The guy ahead of me who had seniority over me, who was expected to get promoted to the sales manager, he got fired because he was very inconsistent. He would take off work some days. When he was on fire, he did great. But he was also saying some things that, were maybe exaggerating the truth, not being completely ethical with the sales. So he got fired, and I got made sales manager. Well, a couple months later, he came back, and he said, "Man, I learned my lesson. I'm really sorry. Can you just hire me on as a salesman?" By the way, this guy got me the job in the first place. So I feel obligated to this guy. He seems like he's really sorry. He just wants to be a salesman because he was pumping gas or something as a job, And it's like, well, geez, without him, I wouldn't have the job in the first place. I'm going to hire him back. And maybe he's learned his lesson. And when he is working hard, he is a very good salesperson. Well, everything in my gut was screaming, do not hire him. Like just this very strong danger gut instinct. And I'm like, what the hell? Why am I having this gut instinct? Well, turns out when I hired him, he worked for me again for 3 weeks. What had happened is he had started his own company and he wanted to steal my entire sales crew. So what he did is he said, everyone, and he was doing this all behind my back while he was selling, hey, you guys, you're going to get an equity position in the company if you come work with me. And we have a contract. So now you can be doing the same sales job, and now you're getting corporate, you're getting a portion of the company profits, not just your commission. And we found out everyone was going to leave on one day, and we found out maybe 2 days before, because there were some salespeople loyal to me, and it's like, this is bull crap. So they told my boss, we contacted the vendor who we were selling for, and or the company we were selling for, and they sent all the sales ID badges to the other company. It says, if you hire any of these guys, we'll cut your contracts. Let's cut this out. So anyways, none of these people ended up leaving the sales team, but they were all ready to. It's like half my team. And that half the team was just absolutely worthless from there on out. So I fired this guy because they were already set on leaving psychologically. And then they found out they couldn't leave. They just became worthless. They started not doing any work, not doing any sales. So I had to fire half my team and rebuild half my team. My gut knew that. My gut knew that from day one. Our subconscious mind picks up on micro expressions, micro intonations, elevated breathing, heart rate, just things that other people do that our conscious mind has no idea they're doing, and it will pick up on danger signs. And when you're subconscious, when you're connected to your intuition, you can get really crazy signals that turn out to be true. And when you learn to trust yourself and clean out the bad stuff, the bad subconscious programs that are just muddying the water and keeping you from really being connected, your subconscious mind can just be an absolutely amazing aid. Have you ever had any, and if I would have listened to that, then I would have properly enforced boundaries instead of this massive boundary violation that screwed me over. So clean out your inner world, then you won't get triggered. Then you come from a position of power where you can say, hey, what's this about? Where you actually, I view it as this. You get to the point where you value and you love yourself, and you get to the point and you have value. You don't need this, like in a dating context. A lot of guys say, wow, I'm with a really cute girl, and they get that validation. Being with a cute girl, if they don't have enough validation independent of that girl, now they're afraid to lose her, and they might people please. They might keep their mouth shut when this girl starts misbehaving or whatever, in a dating context. When you value yourself and for me, I would rather have my self-respect and lose the relationship.
I think you're right.
Would you agree? Then constant boundary violation.
Yeah. And I love,
go ahead.
I love how you said it's all, the subconscious is that supercomputer. And I do need to run.
Okay, yeah,
but everything you said there was perfect.
Okay.
Couldn't agree more.
Clean out your internal world, then you're in a position of power, and you can trust your gut to help you enforce boundaries properly so people don't walk over you, and you're not afraid to lose toxic people. You don't need their validation because you're already awesome and you know it. Anything else, Teresa?
That's a perfect summary.
Okay. Well, it's an honor always having you on the show with the feminine perspective.
For me,
I'm inner masculine, you're inner feminine, and that is our show for today. And just remember, guys, I've got to bring this up. You have more power than you know.